So I was driving one day, almost a year to the day, and they say it lasts a year. And I was rounding the corner and I was begging him, because I believe there's connection there. I was begging him, please tell me because I'm going out of my mind. I'm not functioning well because of this. And I see this ticker tape, which was ironic because, we were in financial services in the stock market, go across my eyes when I'm driving. And I couldn't actually read it. It was really weird, but I was like, that's weird. And so I round the corner, and then this time the ticker tape goes really slowly, and it says disconnected.
That was Tricia Baxley, author, speaker, and someone who spent the last 10 years turning the worst day of her life into something that helps other people survive theirs. 10 years ago, Tricia's husband of 21 years died by suicide. What followed wasn't just grief, it was a complete unraveling of who she thought she was. A high-achieving, always-in-control woman who discovered piece by piece that she'd spent her whole life taking care of everything but herself. This conversation goes places most interviews don't. We talk about addiction, about enabling, about the guilt that isn't yours to carry, and about the strange, uncomfortable relief that can live right next to grief. We talk about her sons, about a room full of fraternity brothers who showed up when it mattered most, and about what it actually takes to rebuild an identity from nothing. This one gets heavy in places, but it's also an honest and ultimately about resilience type of show. I think you're going to be glad you stayed for all of it. Here's Tricia Baxley.
So I was driving one day, almost a year to the day, and they say it lasts a year. And I was rounding the corner and I was begging him, because I believe there's connection there. I was begging him, please tell me because I'm going out of my mind. I'm not functioning well because of this. And I see this ticker tape, which was ironic because, we were in financial services in the stock market, go across my eyes when I'm driving. And I couldn't actually read it. It was really weird, but I was like, that's weird. And so I round the corner, and then this time the ticker tape goes really slowly, and it says disconnected. Yep.
Okay, I want to turn the tables now, Tricia. It's your show now. Okay. You're the host. You're going to turn the tables, and you're going to ask me something real, not a softball question, not a polite question, just something real that you're interested or curious about.
Okay, well, I'm curious about, you actually seem very authentic. I think authenticity is not a human condition that comes without work. So my question to you is, are you as authentic as you seem to be?
I have become more and more so over the years, yes.
Okay. And
less theater now.
Right, okay. And how do you measure that?
I don't really measure it. I just know it. It's that knowingness that every person has or doesn't.
I like it. I like that answer.
Yeah.
Well,
you're a wonderful host.
But, yeah, so here's the thing. And actually, I'm writing a book, and I just wrote about this today, so it's an interesting question. Addiction. So, you find mates that will help you heal yourself. And so I grew up with addiction. My parents were alcoholics. I took care of them, basically. So, you swear growing up, I'm not going to drink excessively, and I'm never marrying someone like my parents. And I did not drink. I mean, I'm, exceptionally health-oriented, which was the good side of not being like them type of mentality. The bad side, though, is subconsciously there was still a lot of stuff going on. And so we don't even know we're doing it. We meet somebody, we fall in love, and, they seem to not have any of the things that you're afraid of having, and then, a couple years in, you're already married, kid on the way, and you realize, oh my gosh, he's got a drinking problem. And that's where it started. I mean, it was literally, almost 10 years, 2 years into the marriage. And, my understanding for myself was I'm not raising a kid like this. And so, we went to counseling, and then, things got busy. And then, I think he was hiding it, I know for a fact he was, because after he died, people were telling me stories, not knowing that he was actually an alcoholic, saying, oh yeah, we went down to the river after work and drank and just, paddled. And I was like, but he was fighting demons. I don't want to give the impression that, poor me, or, this was, he was the cause of anything in our marriage, because it doesn't work like that. I was a massive enabler, and I did not know that because it just seemed normal to me. I took care of my parents, so I took care of him. I mean, it didn't occur to me that wasn't really the way things should go. And it wasn't until after he died that, I started understanding the dynamics more. And out of that, I wrote a book or two.
Now, you mentioned that you've gone through something big, huge,
Massive, massive.
gigantic 10 years ago. Is that your husband's suicide?
Yes, it is. Yep. So, yeah.
Well, where do we begin with that? What was going on in the relationship that may have helped cause him to do that?
Well, I mean, first of all, my premise is there's not one thing
Hmm.
that causes it. And my relationship was either cause, absolutely not. I mean, thankfully, he did it outside the home. So there was a clear definition that this is not about you. This is not about the family. But he and I owned a business together, a financial services business. And I didn't realize this, but he was under some tremendous stress. And then, as it turned out, there were other things in his life that I was unaware of, personal things. Who knows?
Right.
I know that he and I were in a very rocky part of our relationship for sure. Did I ever think in my wildest imagination that someone in my life could do this? No. I mean, sometimes there's warning, but it's really an impulsive act at the end of the day. Like, I'm doing it right this second because I can't see any way out, and he pulled the trigger and that's it. He did not literally pull the trigger, but he took his life. And so, yeah, I can tell you what I think the reason he took his life.
Yeah, I would like to know that because,
Yeah.
you mentioned the financial stress that was huge
Hmm.
that he was going through.
Right.
And the fact that you said it that way means that you were unaware of that. So that kind of tells me that maybe the communication wasn't going the way that you had wanted.
Well, I mean, our communication wasn't going anywhere. I mean, it was 21 years of marriage, and you think you are doing the best you can at the moment, but when you look back, you recognize that there was massive, massive divides between the two of us. I mean, when he ended his life, and I had to figure out what the heck took place, because it really was like, what the heck. I had to go back and reinvent the 21 years and try to figure out, like, wow, how did I not see this coming? But here's the story about why I think it happened. So I was driving, and what happens when you have a tragedy like this, whether it's a murder or a suicide, and sometimes even like a natural death, you play this loop over and over again, and they call it the loop. It's a terminology, and essentially you're playing your story over and over, like, how did this happen? Because there's no closure. I mean, the person that gave you closure is not here, right? So you're trying to figure out, because in my worldview, this is never an option. Like, this is just never an option. So how could this be the option? So I was driving one day, almost a year to the day, and they say it lasts a year. And I was rounding the corner, and I was begging him, because I believe there's connection there. I was begging him, please tell me, because I'm going out of my mind. I'm not functioning well because of this. And I see this ticker tape, which was ironic because, we were in financial services in the stock market, go across my eyes when I'm driving. And I couldn't actually read it. It was really weird, but I was like, that's weird. And so I round the corner, and then this time the ticker tape goes really slowly, and it says disconnected. And I pulled over, and I knew he was telling me he was disconnected. And I know on the surface that sounds really small, but when you think about it in the deepest sense, he was disconnected from himself, from connections to other people, from something greater than himself. And so you ask, how could he kill himself? That's how he can kill himself. Because, we have stuff happen all the time. What he had going on was not monumental, not at all. In
Right.
fact, it went away. And so it's his perception of how monumental it was. And, when we don't have a connection to ourselves, to other people, to your higher self or higher power or whatever it happens to be, then you're really just floating out there by yourself. And it's easy to see how someone can go down in a spiral. But I want to tell you back up to this story. So then fast forward a year later, I'm at this open house, and I'm just kind of walking around. There's this minister there. And I stop and we start talking. And he's like, do you have a husband? I said, no, unfortunately, he passed away. Oh, can I ask how? And I said, he took his life. And he stops me and he goes, similar question. Do you know why? So I told him this exact story, and this man starts crying, and he says to me, 35 years ago, he tried taking his life, and he's never told anybody. And he couldn't figure out the words to explain why he did it. And he said, you just explained to me why I did it.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's the answer.
How much information did you uncover after the fact, and how did you get that information?
Well, monumental amounts. He had a whole lot going on that I knew nothing about. My husband, I felt, was of pious integrity, and I still believe that. But, He was really fighting demons, and those demons, unfortunately permeated every aspect of his life. And so how did I find out? And within the computer were many, many answers. And, it didn't make me feel any better, but it at least gave me some insight as to why the marriage was the way it was. I mean, I don't blame him. We are co-conspirators in the dysfunction. I mean, I hate to say it, we're all equally complicit. But it gave me some insight on where I needed to start for myself. And, that was really huge.
Oh, yeah. No, I can see that. Now, everyone is wondering how exactly did he take his life? You said he didn't pull the trigger. So tell us that, and then also tell us what kind of addiction issues might he have had.
Yeah, so he jumped. We worked in a 6-story building, unfortunately, and it was an inside atrium. So that was that. I mean, needless to say, I never went back in the building, and it was 1:30 in the morning that it took place on a Sunday. So, it was really difficult. So,
in what way were you an enabler?
So I grew up feeling from a very young age, probably 6 or 7. Irony here. I came home from school when I was 6 or 7. My brother, 11 months older, my younger brother too, to find my mother trying to take her life. She did not, and I never thought it was a real threat. It was more a form of manipulation, and it continued throughout my whole life. So from the time I was a little girl, I knew I was on my own. I knew I needed to take care of my mother. I knew that she was weaker than I was. I mean, I knew this like intuitively and on some deep subconscious level. So, I became the strong one. And, until last 10 years, I actually believed that I had some gift of resiliency. And now I understand we all have it. It's just, some of us manifested a little bit faster. But anyhow, I became the person who did everything, who believed I could do everything, who never had any needs. I mean, my husband didn't meet any needs, but I never asked him to. So, and he, the other flip side of the coin, grew up in a family where he learned helplessness. His mother did everything for him. So, I mean, we were, as you can imagine, 2 magnets locked in.
Right.
And that's how it played out. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's been 10 years so far. How old was your son, or do you have any other children, and how did they respond?
Well, I have 2 boys, and Kevin was 19 and Ryan was 11. Kevin was at college, so I chose to, this is a crazy story. The police came to my house at 1:30 in the morning. My younger son was upstairs sleeping. Ryan was sleeping. And it's no exaggeration. I literally screamed on the floor for an hour and a half in shock. He never woke up. That's very unlikely. And then I, got everybody out of the house. I woke Ryan up for school, made his lunch, made his breakfast, drove him to school, never said a word, knowing that he needed his brother there. So then I got in the car with my brother, drove to Miami University, which is an hour and a half away. And I have to call my son out. He comes out and, I had to tell my son that his dad took his life in the hallway of a college building. And I will tell you, nothing worse. Nothing worse. And so we drove home, and I kept him here. I went to the school to pick up my younger son and got him home and sat him down and told him that his dad died. And initially, I chose not to tell him it was a suicide because I felt like I needed to talk to a counselor first. I really wasn't sure. I knew I was going to tell him. I just didn't know how much to tell him. You know what I mean? So
how did you frame it?
Well, framed itself. So that night, I just told him he had a heart attack. And I will tell you, my son, he's a little bit too smart for his pants. He goes, that's impossible. He rode the Pelotonia and he did 200 miles. There's no way he died of a heart attack. And I was like, okay. Kids. So anyhow, but that night, both my kids were like, we used to have family night when they're little and watch movies in bed. They were like, can we sleep? Do you mind if we sleep in bed with you? I'm like, absolutely not. So we piled in. My younger son was middle. He fell asleep. Kevin's talking. Older son's talking. And he's like, Mom, and he starts sobbing. And he's being a typical 19-year-old. Dad's never going to see me graduate. He's never going to see me have my first kid, get married. He went through all this stuff. And he goes, and worse, right now, he was pledging for a fraternity. He goes, my fraternity brothers the first thing they're going to know about me is my dad took his life.
Right.
And it sounds like, there are bigger things here, but he's a kid and it was
Yeah.
real. And my younger son was awake listening and he heard it.
Wow.
And it was a screech that only can be described as a wounded animal. It was horrendous. So that's how he found out. Not ideal. But I will tell you what he said, though. This is an interesting thing. He said to me, when he stopped screaming, he sat up, he goes, "That was the most ignorant thing anyone could do." First words. I was like, well, yeah. So,
Was he addicted to anything other than drink?
well, okay. So 10th year, I filed divorce papers. He's still drinking. You get help or we're done. So he did get help. He stopped drinking. And, but I don't know how much you know about addictions. That's just the symptom. And what you really got to do is change up here. And, he went to AA, but he never really committed to it. So the new addiction became me. Got like very, very dependent on me. And then, as it turned out, he switched to gambling in the stock market. So, and I didn't see it that way. I just know we were losing money hand over fist. And I mean, bleeding money, honestly. And I couldn't understand it.
Let's stop for a second. Let's just pause for a second.
Yeah.
You knew you were losing money hand over fist.
Yeah.
What did you imagine was happening? Or were you just fearful to confront him?
And so it wasn't until I would do the taxes that I would see the capital loss and I would lose it. And so it started to get to be more consistent. And he actually was highly skilled at what he did, but addiction's another whole level because then you're chasing the dopamine. And, I didn't know. I actually didn't even piece it together till after he died. But it was the year before he died. And it was literally the most stress I've ever been under in my life because, I was saving for the future. And obviously the future that never came, but I was saving for the future because to me that was security. And since I never felt safe my whole life, that was my safety. And here he was just burning it away. And I mean, that last year was horrible. And I mean, there were lies and there were, he was an addict. And all I knew is I needed to stop the bleed. And so a month before he died, it was leading up to that last year. And basically addicts lie. It's not a reflection on him. It's part of the disease. And I basically said in October, I'm losing my mind. I cannot micromanage you every second. I can't do this. So we made a deal. This is what his parameters were on our account. If you did anything outside that, you needed to consult with me. And if you ever lie again, you're to move out. No questions. Well, fast forward, end of December. He lied. He moved out. I mean, he never stopped. I mean, I had to stop looking because I was losing my mind. And so, and yeah, I mean, it was a lot. And, this is a really sad statement, but I'm going to make it. When he died, I was more peaceful within the context of now I can just manage everything myself because, I mean, I wish him back at this moment, particularly for the sake of my children. But that piece alone was so incredibly stressful. I mean, monumentally stressful.
Yeah. When I speak to people who have had or experienced similar circumstances, discussion of relief seems to always come up in some form or another, whether it's a little bit or a lot. And that doesn't diminish the love or the experience at all.
It doesn't. I think, you talk about society. I mean, society, if you've never gone through something like this, it's really difficult to imagine that the paradox, holding the paradox, which I personally believe is one of the hardest things we humans have to do. But the paradox of, I'm so sad, I wish he was back, to, I'm so relieved he's not here because I'm not stressed out anymore. And, it's a paradox. And, I have to tell you, the last 10 years has been just so many paradoxes. And, learning to balance that in our life is, like I said, it's really difficult. But you recognize that actually is life. We're balancing the paradoxes. And, the people who don't feel like they have someone that they can actually honestly say there's relief in this, it's unfortunate because it is a real, true emotion and they have a right to feel that way. So,
Tell me a little bit about what it felt like to become a widow overnight and a single mother.
Yeah. Well, it's not what I signed on for. That's for sure. Yeah. So, well, here's an interesting story. So the first night, I'm in a daze. I mean, truly, shock is a beautiful thing. I was completely in shock. And, we're driving back from Miami University to come home. And my older son is supposed to go on his spring break. And he's like, Mom, in the car, he's like, Mom, I don't think I can go on spring break. Can I go to the Mexican mission trip instead? We have a church mission trip that we had taken as a family, and it was like in 3 weeks. So I was like, absolutely, I'll help you figure that out. And so in the meantime, I'm thinking to myself, I need to call the church and get the youth group to help me out here. Now, it sounds like not a big deal. It was the first time I'd ever asked for help. It was monumental. I mean, but I knew my kids needed it. I knew I needed it. So by the time we got home, we got Ryan figured out, everyone showed up. Youth group shows up at my house, and they're sitting around the table, and there's everything you can think of food, dessert-wise, and they're taking care of my kids for me. And in the meantime, I'm in the dining room in the dark now, and the people who are coming in and out of my house are slowing down, and there's a moment there where I realized that it was the first time in my life that I had actually felt connected to other people in the truest sense. And it was a massive, massive change in perspective. But as I'm just coming to terms with that realization that, I basically was not authentic. I mean, I realized that. I'm also looking across the room and I'm seeing my kids, and I am literally, tears are just flowing down my face because I'm like, how am I going to get these kids whole? I mean, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. All I wanted was a perfect family for my kids, right? And then somebody told a joke. And everyone around the table, including my kids, started just dying, laughing. And I knew, like, at that moment, if they can laugh on the worst day of their life, we're going to be okay. And then the crazy thing is, Matthew, I hear this voice in my head literally say, you are never going back to the way things were.
Right.
And I didn't. And it changed. Everything about my life changed. My parenting changed. If I enabled my husband, I can guarantee you I was enabling my kids. And my oldest son got the worst of it. He probably would have told you at the time the best of it, but I know for a fact it was the worst of it. And so he's going back the week after my husband died. And I am petrified that he's not ready emotionally. And I sit him down and he commits to doing therapy at school for a year. And I look him in the eye, and I don't even know where this came from, but it was honest. I said 2 things to him. The first thing I said is, I'm never going to allow the 2 of you to use your father's suicide as an excuse for your failings. You will never be a victim in this household. Like, I was like basically saying, it's too easy, right? They'd all get a get out of jail free pass by, And then the second thing I told my older son, and Ryan wasn't so much impacted, was I'm going to stop enabling you, and it's going to hurt. And I will be here to support you, but you are strong enough to pick yourself back up.
What was it like for you to have to switch off like that because you really want to take care of the boys?
Matthew, it was weird. It was almost like, I talk about a spiritual awakening. You talk about like a massive shift in perspective. It was literally a massive shift. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, it was glorious and I'm the same person now that I was 10 years ago. No, it's been an evolution. But I was fully aware that while I didn't have a hand in my husband's choice, I was definitely complicit in enabling him. And he lacked resiliency. And I did not want my kids growing up like that. I was absolutely never going to let that happen. And yeah, it was tough. My older son and I were like this for a long time because I had to basically reparent him. And he was, fighting it tooth and nail, naturally. But eventually we got on the same page. And my younger son, he wasn't really subjected to it. He was just going into those formative years where enabling became a big thing. So it wasn't that big of a deal.
So knowing that you're the person that you were as the enabler and coming from a dysfunctional family and all that was going on with you, how did you feel that maybe there was some responsibility on your side, and how did you release that eventually?
Yeah, no, I didn't feel like there was a responsibility because I think we're all responsible for ourselves. Even back then, I never felt. Now, I did feel guilt, which is a normal reaction. That was my biggest enabling. I took on the emotions of everybody. My husband never had to face anything. I did it. My kids never had to face anything. I did it. They're emotionally upset. Give it to me. I'll take it. You just go play. And I did that with my husband. So I had to really release that was a belief system. It wasn't true. It was a belief I had from a young age that I was responsible for other people's feelings, other people's actions. And I really wasn't. And so initially, like I said, the guilt was astronomical.
Oh, yeah. Well, your perception of yourself had a lot to play in that whole thing, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I have to ask, just because it would go along with the addiction and the drinking and all that, were there extramarital things going on?
Yes, for a short answer. I don't know to what extent, and I don't know even the context, to be honest with you. I knew there were things going on behind my back. But I also know that these demons he was fighting, and I do know that part. And I think if he could have been any other way, he would have preferred. And let's just say that. And so, there was everything. It was like one of everything, I swear. And, I look back now and it almost seems like it didn't happen, if that makes sense. There's been such a change and shift in perspective that, it couldn't possibly be a marriage for me at this point. So it's almost like, obviously I'm aware it happened. This person was in my life 21 years, but I just don't have an emotional trigger from it, if that makes sense. So,
How have the boys healed? Have they become whole? Do you think that they're healthy
yeah,
boys now?
they
Yeah.
are. So we were always close, but it's made us. We have an exceptionally cohesive family, and my younger son and older son, people are always commenting that the love they share and the connection they share it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And it's born out of the fact that my older son there's an 8-year difference. So he took it upon himself to make sure that he was there for his younger brother. And, we got a lot of support. We know a lot of people in the town I live in. So a lot of people stepped up in interesting ways, more in the support of, asking a kind word of the kids, supporting them. Like, my younger son played tennis, and people would, go out of their way, it seemed to me, to cheer him on. You know what I mean? Just more than they would some other some other parents' kid. So they're doing amazing. My younger son graduated college and he's going to go to law school. And my older son's he's in logistics. He's starting his own business. So it's just, they're good and they're happy. And, we've walked a journey that I don't wish on anybody, but honestly, Matthew, we're better humans because of it.
Wow. That's crazy good.
It is crazy.
One of the things that happens to children, and I don't know if this is a behavioral aspect or just watching dad be addicted or an addict, sometimes the kids absorb stuff and it's very quiet and it's very invisible.
Yep.
Do you think that they're fairly healthy right now?
I do. That's one of the things that we never didn't talk about. Fortunately, a lot of my husband's drinking was behind the scenes. It got to the point when he wasn't allowed to drink in the house, basically. So, whether they thought their dad was, passive, that was accurate, because that's what his normal mode would be when he drank. But, Ryan was born in 2004. Chuck quit drinking in 2006. So Ryan was really oblivious to it. Kevin has a bigger recollection, but these are conversations that I've had since they were just little guys. And this goes scant, this would be something even if they didn't have addiction in the background of their lives. So they're fully aware. My younger son, it just has a built-in, I don't really care about that type of behavior. He's just different. But older son was in a fraternity, so you can imagine that he was exposed to that kind of thing over and over again. But he is aware that he needs to be careful, and he holds himself accountable. So, sober October went to May. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
so he knows, and everybody's susceptible. It's an emotional disease. And really, it's not the alcohol that they're copying. It's the emotional behavior. It's the way that somebody handles life. That's what they're actually copying. And so for me, I don't know how much I balanced it out. I have no idea. but I am definitely have always been exceptionally resilient, over responsible, not a victim, gratitude all the time. So I'm hoping that maybe it balanced it out. I mean, here's the thing about parents. We all have our own kids, own personalities, own environments. So, we all do the best we can. And when we look back, is the only time we really know if we actually did a good job or not. So, looking back right now, it looks pretty good. 10 years.
That's great.
I don't know. But they're happy. And, that's what I can only hope for, is that they feel a sense of wholeness,
Statistically speaking, you have to be extra vigilant with the
Absolutely.
boys because of dad and because of
Yeah.
dad's behavior, and perhaps some of it because of your behavior.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that we need to be aware of, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and those are conversations that every parent should have, but I definitely have them more frequently. And,
Yeah.
we're fortunate because of this, situation, and suicide is, we made sure we didn't hide it. I had a lot of shame growing up. A lot of it had to do with keeping secrets. And so as a family, we decided we're not going to keep this a secret in any way, shape, or form. We're going to talk about it if we feel like it. And during the service, as an example, I mean, my son Kevin got up there and talked about his dad, and he was blatant about saying that he was much more than his suicide. And I have a really good story about that. Do you want to hear a pretty good story?
I do. Hold on to that for 1 second. How did the mutual families, deal with the rupture together?
It was interesting. My husband's family are avoidance, so they basically just buried it and moved on, which is, we can see the apple from the tree type of thing. And my family, my mother and father were deceased by then. My brother stepped up in the most amazing way. My local brother, I have two other brothers, and they added support. But my local brother in particular, he stepped up to really be not a father, but certainly a very serious uncle. And, so that, and my older brother worked in our business. So he was part of the business. So he really was impacted greatly too, not just personally, but also professionally. So, it was difficult all around, but, I feel exceptionally blessed because we had a lot of support. And, that's really what community is. Like, community may not seem important when everything's going gloriously, but when it hits the fan, we want to, we're like lucky if we have people around us that can step in. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay, circle back to that story that was on your mind.
So it's a great story. So let's go back to my son in bed, and he's sobbing about the fraternity brothers, first thing they're going to know. And so I made a decision for the funeral that we would only hold calling hours for 2 hours, to save my sons. And, they told me there would be a massive amount of people. I didn't really know, didn't really think about it. There were so many people, it was insane. And so I'm like in a blur. Everything's a blur. And my kids and I are just like trying to get through this. And all of a sudden, rounding the corner to get into the room where we were, no less than 50 fraternity brothers showed up from Miami. They left their parents on parents' weekend and showed up for my son. And I still have shivers right now. It was one of the most absolutely beautiful things I've ever witnessed. And it wasn't until years later that I think when I had a conversation with some of them to understand really what they did for my kid, because, he really was feeling, and understandably at 19, that this is going to be an embarrassment. This is going to be shameful. And these boys showed up. I mean, some of them with brand new blue blazers, and they've never been to a funeral before. And, they sat in that church listening to my son sob about his dad. And my girlfriends gave him tissues, they told me later. And, those are things that come out of things like this that are truly remarkable. And that is one of the things that saved my son, quite frankly.
When did you start rebuilding yourself instead of surviving this terrible situation?
Yeah, right from the beginning. I was smart enough to know. I heard the voice, you're not going back to the way things were.
Yeah.
But it also left a big question, well, where am I going? I had no idea. And I didn't have any idea. For the most part, I was just kind of winging it. But I knew it was going to change my life, and it changed it in the most profound way. I mean, it changed it in every aspect, but the most important way was feeling grounded, feeling centered, feeling safe, feeling whole, all those things that we all strive for. And, but that happened immediately. I mean, I was in therapy right from the beginning. And I had this really unorthodox, he's since passed, but this unorthodox therapist, he interviewed me before he took me on as a client. And it was the first week. And I walked in and he said to me, what's your first immediate need? And I said, I have these 100-pound weights on my shoulders of guilt. And I can't even take a step without feeling them. And so this guy, who was like 4'8", I mean, yeah, he's a little guy, little round guy, gets in my face and he screams at me. He goes, if you think for 1 second this is your effing fault, if you stick with me 6 months, I'll prove to you you had nothing to do with this. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I got back in the car 50% later because whatever he did, I believed. I didn't know why yet, but I knew he was right. And so I stuck it out with him for a year, and then I moved to somebody else where my growth needed to go. And, it's been a constant evolution. I mean, I found a very, very specific spiritual path 6 or 7 years ago. And, I've created new friend groups. It's amazing when you grow rapidly. Sadly, certain people have to leave, and then the door opens and other people come in. And it's been kind of that type of thing for 10 years, but now I'm at a stable place and where things are awesome.
Oh, that is great to hear. It's been said that grief dismantles identity.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that you obviously went through. Do you have a best friend now?
It's funny, I do. I have a best friend. Her name is Mary. It's funny saying that. Yeah. And, going back to the grief dismantles. So have you heard of the term dark night of the soul? Okay. So that night when I heard that voice telling me, that was the beginning of, truly a dark night of the soul. And the reason why I felt so connected to everyone, including myself, is I had been living an entire life with this identity over here of type A, high charging, take no prisoners, completely resilient, needed nobody. And in one moment, a knock on the door stripped it all away. It was gone. And it was like, my best analogy, it's like having your identity shot out in a cannon and the pieces of you are flying all over the place. So,
right. Before we move on to lighter and brighter, are you involved with any anti-suicide groups? Have you worked with any of those people?
I did. So weirdly, the year my husband died, first of all, 6 weeks after my husband died, I get a call from the middle school where my son was. And I said, hey, we have a favor. You can say no. Okay. I said, I heard the story, and the story was this woman also lost her husband to suicide at the same school, mind you, in a town that this doesn't ever happen in. But she had chosen to keep it private and say it was a heart attack, even though the entire town knew it wasn't, because there was homicide tape, which is what they put up if they consider it suicide.
Isn't it funny that people can deal with saying that it was a heart attack, but not suicide? It's like so quirky and weird.
It is so, well, there's just shame. And there's, what happens is you start thinking it's to do with you. Like, you're afraid of what people are going to say. There every emotion possible. I get why people do that, but it's ridiculous. I had already, before I even got this call from the middle school, I had gotten a call from a girlfriend who said, listen, I just want to give you a heads up. There's another suicide in our town. And she knew it, and she doesn't even know this woman, right? Because there's homicide tape, which is normal. Like when you have a suicide, they will treat it like a homicide. And after those police came and after I stopped screaming for an hour and a half, they interrogated me, literally. But so to answer your question, I took her on as a friend. I became a companion to her. And so I started doing that. And then fast forward almost a year, to that day, I get a call from my older son and he said, hey, my roommate's best friend is Noah Goss, someone he had played basketball with when he was younger. His dad took his life. And I told Noah that I talked to Noah and said, if your mom needs help, call my mom. And so long story short, got reacquainted with my friend Rita. We're very close friends now. And so I've walked the journey with her. And so basically what ended up happening was I sort of sideways into an organization called LOSS, Local Outreach for Suicide Survivors. Got trained to be a grief group facilitator, companion to others, similar to what I was already doing. And so I did that for years. Very, very fulfilling, exceptionally healing. And I'm not actively involved right now just because my life doesn't have room for much at this point, but it's something that it's near and dear to me. It's a phenomenal organization.
Wow, that's great. That's good.
Yeah.
Why doesn't your life have the energy to do these things?
Not
What's
energy.
going on?
Not energy, but time. Well, I've written a couple books. I'm in the process of writing two more. I'm engaging in podcasts. I am doing workshops. I'm still involved in my kids' life. There's just only so much that you can do. And so
Right. But you still type A, and it's clear to me that you are.
Type A in a different way, though. Like I don't tend to type A back then. I had a goal and I darn well was going to reach it, hell or high water. Nowadays, I have a goal and I let the flow take care of it, And sometimes I don't reach it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes it looks different than what I planned. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay.
Good, good. On my show, a lot of the time we talk about food and it's fun. It's fun related.
Yeah.
In your case, let's talk about food as identity, memory, grief, and rebirth.
Okay.
So how has your food behaviors changed since then?
Well, interestingly enough, I became a vegetarian at 15. So I am still a vegetarian. How has my food changed? Well, it's changed like this. So I used to cook back in the day when my husband was here, my kids were still here. I was very rigid about having meals on the table since I didn't grow up when I grew up. And I would cook 2 meals all the time. Their meal, my meal. And since he's passed, my kids are no longer in the house. I mean, I eat crazy stuff. I might eat, sweet potatoes 5 days in a row as my main course. I might eat, I'm on to gazpacho right now, which by the way is pretty awesome because it's the season. So I might do that. So my tastes have not changed, but my eating habits have drastically changed. I don't, I'm told I'm a good cook. I don't know if I actually agree with that. But I cook all the holidays and
what is someone going to tell you you're a bad cook?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Right. So exactly. They're coming to the house for a meal. They're, oh, this is the worst meal ever. Bite me again. Right. So, but I never cook for myself is what I'm trying to say. Other than I'll make vegetable pho or I'll make something gazpacho, but I don't sit down and literally put a plate together with, the 3 different food groups. So in that respect, my life has changed drastically in that I eat when I want to eat. So.
Okay. And what have you eaten today?
Today I start always with 2 slices of David's full grain bread. Big plug for David there. Whoa. And then I had, I'm on a cottage cheese roll. So I had cottage cheese and crackers, sweet potato, which I baked in the oven, roasted. And what else did I eat? I think that's tomato. Of course, I had a tomato. So that's
love it. It
right
sounds
now.
like you're on the all-carb diet.
Well, here's the funny thing. It is all carb because I did this genotype thing, and I naturally eat what I need, which is why I'm on sweet potato. I think potassium I need. So I got this genotype done, and it tells you with your DNA what you're supposed to eat. And supposedly I'm supposed to eat 65 to 75% carbs. Go figure, because that's what I do. So I was thankful for that. Yeah.
Well, I'd not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Genotype.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, time for a lightning round, Tricia.
Okay.
Control or surrender?
Surrender.
And why would that be?
Because I have grown to understand that is the only healthy, centered way to live.
For a person who has been controlling?
Oh, we all controlled. Our whole lives are controlled. So yes,
Okay.
no more.
Truth or harmony?
Well, it depends on the audience. Harmony overall, but truth if it's something that needs to be said. I believe in tough love.
People are so amazing because I ask that question quite often, and it's probably split 50-50 on the responses.
It makes sense.
Okay. What about knowing versus wondering?
Oh no, knowing. Knowing is all that there
That
is.
trumps everything else for you.
Oh goodness, 100%. Yeah.
What's a hill you'll die on related to relationships?
To support them or to get out of them.
Are you in one now presently?
I'm not. Just ended one.
Okay.
But what
So
would?
yeah, give me your response both ways then.
All right. So what I would die on, what I would die on, meaning this like, what would be a deal breaker die on, would be where I'm losing my authenticity.
Okay.
Will not do that for anybody.
Can you see yourself holding on to your authenticity if you're in a relationship with someone who is really, really unhealthy and
No, I
not
would get out.
there?
I will get out. Yeah, I won't do that.
Well, that sounds good.
Although
Okay.
I have, but I won't. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Well, that kind of explains your instinctive identity. So that's very interesting.
Well,
Any other questions?
let's see. So what's your favorite food? You're the taste of gray here.
Not unlike yourself, I am a people pleaser and an enabler for people who want to have yummy treats in their mouth. So I
Okay.
cook for Lynn, my wife, and our two
Nice.
kitties,
Nice.
Smudgy and Verna Teriyaki. For the cats, I make them scrambled eggs every day, and I make them daddy chicken so they don't have to eat the canned processed crap. And
Wow.
for Lynn, I cook everything. Yesterday it was black bean chicken.
Wow.
Today it might be salmon. So it just kind of changes. My favorite food for myself would be something simple, unless I had access to king crab legs. That is my favorite food.
Okay.
But when I'm cooking now, I'm much more simple than I was back in the day when I was cooking for people like Robin Williams or
Oh,
the
wow.
Eagles or
Wow, that's
Fleetwood Mac
wild.
and people like that. So, I'm a real simple guy now.
Well, that's awesome. So is that your love language?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I assumed. Yeah.
The only time my love language shifts is when I'm in a group of people. If I need to feed, educate, or entertain them, then my love language becomes the person I'm sitting across from.
Wow. Am I still the interviewer here?
Yes, you sure are.
Okay. So
And you just proved that by asking that question.
I guess you're right. So so of the people that the famous people you serve, do you feel like their tastes are drastically different than the typical people you come across in your life?
People with access to a lot of money do have interesting behaviors and tastes. But for the most part, when you strip that all away, people are just people.
I agree. That's absolutely
Yeah.
true. Absolutely true. So who would you say at this point would you like to be cooking for if you had a chance?
Oh, you mean if it wasn't for my own family?
Right. Like, yeah, like if you had perfect world and you had to pick one person or you could pick one person that you could prepare this amazing meal for, who would you want to do that? Like, assuming that, I'm making the assumption you probably want to have conversation with that person too.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about living or deceased?
You could pick either.
Okay, well, if it was deceased, mom and dad, no doubt about
That's
it.
so
It was
nice.
like
I
number
love
one
that.
right there.
That's
She taught me
beautiful.
everything about what I know as far as kitchen, flavor, aroma, color, plate architecture, all
Wow.
that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she used to sit me down on the tile in the kitchen, and she would just move around and do her thing, and I would just watch her. And she would say, "Go out and play. All the little boys are out playing right now. Why are you watching me?"
You know what? That's a really good mom. Seriously, if we're probably in a very similar generation. It's a really good mom in our generation, way back, to allow you to be you. I would want to cook for your mom just for that reason.
Oh, wow. Well, when I communicate with her next, I'll tell her that.
Please tell her yes. Well, she's probably listening anyhow. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now time for the impromptu promo. So, Tricia, I want you to tell everyone who isn't watching right now, like, what would you tell your best friend later when she said, "So, you were on the podcast today with Matthew on 50 Tastes of Grey. What was that like?" Now, respond as if you're really talking to her.
I would say it was really super fun because I got to talk to someone who is a great interviewer and he asked fantastic questions. And the subject matter was so awesome because it was real. And I would tell her it was real. It was real. And I love it. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's really nice. Now, where would people find you if they're interested in following your path and your journey?
Well, interesting to use the word path. So my website is a path for healing and the number 4, pathforhealing.com. And my Gmail is a path for healing, the number 4, path for healing at Gmail. My books are on Amazon, Tricia Baxley. You look up that name, you'll see it. And the first book is The Stories We Tell Ourselves. And it takes readers back to how we get these beliefs, formulated in our minds and how they just keep being validated through our whole entire life. And then there's a workbook that actually goes along with it. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, what would you do if I flew you here to Hawaii tomorrow? What would be the first thing you'd want to do upon landing?
Oh my goodness, what would I do? I would probably immediately go to the beach to see
Right.
the beautiful
Okay.
water and I wouldn't necessarily require the need to go in, but I would love to sit on that beach.
Just the whole
Just
peaceful
sit there,
aspect.
yeah, just to be able to like meditate and just to take it all in. And if I was fortunate enough to see a sunset, I would be extra, extra happy.
Right. Oh, that sounds great. I hope you had a good time today.
It was fabulous. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Good. Do you know how we say hello and goodbye here?
Aloha.
Yeah, aloha. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Matthew. It was awesome.